Welcome, everyone, to Massaya, Bottling the Spirit of Lebanon, a conversation with Sammy Goshen. My name is TJ Griffin, and I'm the corporate wine educator for Winebow. We welcome your questions at any point during this webinar, but please use the Q&A rather than the chat bar to submit them. Let me introduce your host for today. Master Sommelier Ron Edwards is the husband of one wife, the father of 5 girls, a surfer, a lover of bow ties. He has over 29 years of hospitality experience, and since 2018, he's been the director of wine education for Winebow. And our very special guest for today, Sammy Goshen, is truly a Renaissance man. He has created Massaya, an admired international wine and Iraq brand from the wreckage of his family's estate in Lebanon's Bekaa Valley. Since returning from the U.S. in 1992 after the devastation of civil war, he and his brother Ramsey have built a winery in the Bekaa and a fabulous wine resort on Mount Lebanon at Fakra. Sammy travels widely to promote Massaya and is an exceptional example of Lebanon's renowned habit of producing brilliant entrepreneurs. Looking back at his family's legacy, the struggles in the Middle East, the pride in his homeland, wine has a very special meaning to Sammy. He says that, quote, "A glass of wine from Lebanon is more than an alcoholic beverage. It is a message of civilization, tolerance, and identity." And with that, I'll hand it over to our host, Mr. Ron Edwards.
Thank you very much, TJ. Welcome, Sammy. This is a great pleasure to have you in front of me video and on our teams at the same time. So thanks for joining us from Lebanon. Looks like a beautiful day there.
Yes, hi. Thank you, TJ. Thank you, Ron. Wonderful, beautiful day. One of the great things about us not worrying about weather here, we have other worries, but weather has been quite convenient to grow grapes and produce wine.
To a winemaker, I suppose weather is the biggest of all worries, perhaps. But yes, you definitely have a few other worries. But we want to keep this compact, and I'd love to just have a casual conversation. But we have some purpose involved, right? So why don't we jump right in? It's fascinating to me, the whole idea of Lebanon. And this picture's from 1972, before the family left. And in 1991, the Civil War was subsiding. You're living in the U.S. in relative safety and comfort. And, what was it that drew you back in 1992 to restore Massaya?
It's those roots that you see in this picture, Don. I guess I had left Lebanon in 75, or were lucky to be sent to France, then to the U.S., but Lebanon never left me. So in the U.S., I was indeed having a comfortable life, working as an architect in LA, and I love the U.S., dearly, and I spent quite a lot of time there. And Syrian invasion of Lebanon in 1990 with the first Iraq war, Lebanon was looted, completely violated by all means, and a very close family of ours, the Shamoun, Danny and his wife and 2 children were massacred. I couldn't take it. I just picked up the phone, called my mom. I was 27. I said, I'm returning to Lebanon while everyone was leaving. She said, it's your choice of life. I returned, and this is when I looked at the properties we had. I had to go to the Bekaa Valley, claim the land from squatters. This property you see, we left here in April of 75, and I came back 17 years later. I slept 4 or 5 months on the rooftop of our own house with squatters in it. And I had to convince them out. I was yesterday there actually, because we're harvesting the reds there. And I was with 3 of my 4 children. I'm very pleased to know you have 5 daughters and you're a surfer. We were at the beach the day before. So Lebanon is very, in that manner, versatile. So we crossed Mount Lebanon into the Bekaa. We had lunch with my brother at the winery, at the house that I got the squatters from out in 1992. So this is why I came back.
Okay. It's a story of courage and passion to us. In the U.S., we have such a distant sort of sense of what it would be like to go through that, because, our Civil War conflict was, generations ago now. So it's still quite raw, I assume, in Lebanon, and the conflict, I guess, has not completely subsided, and the Lebanese people are always on the edge of something. Lebanon, in the concept is far from new to wine, right? The history of winemaking goes back to the BCE era, you know, into the time of biblical characters and the trading wealth of that region from that time frame. Give us a quick history lesson, because, you know, in our schools in the US, we don't get a lot of Lebanese history. So give us a little bit of like, all right, this is the snapshot of how Lebanon evolved as a country.
Exactly. You have on the left of the screen the temple of Jupiter. Those are the highest Roman temple columns, and right next to it is the temple of Bacchus, and you see Mount Lebanon snow cap. Lebanon is the Eastern Mediterranean, and it was and still is the trading route for all those ancient civilizations. So the Bekaa was really the breadbasket of the Roman Empire, and preceded the Romans were the Phoenicians. The Phoenicians planted vines across their empire and around the Mediterranean basin. They were traders, they were sailors, and they took around grapes, and they took around wine with olive oil and all those Mediterranean flavors that the world now cherishes. That you go to Whole Foods, you get Lebanese tabbouleh, and you get hummus, and you get amongst those, and definitely the most renowned and the most revered produce of the Phoenicians was wine. So it came from around the Mesopotamia on the northeast of Lebanon, came down along the Silk Route and into the Old World. And after the Phoenicians actually sold wine to the pharaohs of Egypt, to the Greeks, and after them came the Romans. The Romans, while they produced wine across their empire that stretched all the way from Asia to Scotland, built the Temple of Bacchus in the Bekaa Valley, not Rioja, Bordeaux, or Tuscany for that sake. It is really an unbelievable terroir that you get on here. I love the fact that you are tuned into history, but also as a wine person, you cannot not be fascinated by the terroir you get here. As I said, we're harvesting now. Luckily, we have some birds just eating some grapes, and this is pressing on us. But you know, I have my French partners in Chateauneuf, which is across the Mediterranean here, across the ocean and the lake, I would say. And they have issues every day worrying of rainfall, of all sort of how do you say, the nature being putting sticks in the wheel. Whereas here, we get mature grapes year on year. The grapes are organic by default. We don't irrigate thanks to those snow-capped mountains you see. We don't force nature in any way. We have this afternoon breeze that is starting now that provokes the leaves to shake, wonderful photosynthesis, and certainly influence from the east towards the Bekaa, where you had this coolness, so the vines cool a lot at night, very slow maturing of the grapes, and wonderful complexity, and that's what we get in the vats.
Yeah, we're going to cover that in our next slide anyway. But I think summing up your concept of the history, I think it's important for the audience to understand that Lebanon isn't a new wine provider on the scene. It's actually far older than anything we're endearing ourselves to in Europe. And so many things start there. And one of the things that links that is the reaction that most people figure out when they find that Obaidi is actually genetically Chardonnay, but it's considered an indigenous grape to the Bekaa and Fakra area. And it's been there for so long, it has its own genetic structure based on Lebanon. But so how'd the Chardonnay get there? Did the Phoenicians bring it? It doesn't really matter. The point is, it's like, wow, this is more indigenous here perhaps than it even was in France. So
yes.
Give a sense of place here. You've got this cool artist rendition map to help people understand that this is very similar, if you want to think about this, to the idea of going to Napa Valley, where you have a coastal range, or Sonoma, you have a coastal range and then a valley and another range of mountains, and very similar to what you find when you come off the ocean in Chile and a few other places in the world. So this really is, I mean, you just look at the map and go, oh yeah, you can grow grapes here really well. But the idea, you're in Fakra today, so this might be a good time to turn the camera and show everybody how high in the mountains you are. The picture behind me is Bekaa Valley, with the mountain behind me leading to where Fakra would be. And then, just the difference between the two is important for people to realize, because your whites are grown up in Fakra and your reds are grown down in Bekaa. Yeah, there you go. So everybody note, they're up there. I think you're at like 1,700 meters.
Yeah, we're at 1,700 meters from sea level. I'm not a big technology person, so I don't want to. Yeah, this is the snow. I'm across this mountain, while the picture behind you is the Bekaa Valley. You're at 1,100 meters, right behind you, and what you were showing and displaying in terms of map earlier is extremely accurate. You see, you have those two mountain ranges and you have this high altitude plateau in between. That's the Bekaa Valley. So the first mountain range, Mount Lebanon, shields away the humidity from the Mediterranean. The second mountain range that separates Lebanon from Syria carves away Lebanon, shields the Bekaa Valley from the heat and the desert heat of Syria. This is why Lebanon is so tiny, but it is the richest place. It has the highest mountains in the area. We have the highest vineyards of the northern hemisphere, so altitude compensates for latitude. Yet snow-capped mountains year round, so a lot of water in the undersoils, and the vines that we do not irrigate have to dig in deep to find this humidity. So they get through different layers of clay, limestone. They get the caillou, this minerality you want in a wine, rather than overpowering jammy wines. And indeed, as you said, Lebanon is, we trace back winemaking here to about 7,000 years ago. So certainly not a new world. It's very old in history. To answer a bit about the Chardonnay and the Obeidi, historically Lebanon before the First World War suffered of 450, 500 years of Ottoman ruling. The Ottomans controlled all this area, and as a civilization, they did not allow for winemaking due to their religious beliefs, and they tried to impose Islam on us, which we fought and resisted. You have 2/3 of the Mount Lebanon. This is echoing to you that those kind of resilience you talk about the Lebanese. 2/3 were 1/3 decimated, 1/3 migrated. This is why you have a lot of immigration in the U.S., for example, and the one that remained kept on making wine for the mass, for the rituals, and the monasteries, often in the hiding in the very high unreachable mountains. We have monasteries here that are carved in the rocks. You could barely reach them but by foot on animals. And this is where Obeidi remained, and Merweh, and those indigenous varieties, because we kept on making wine for the mass. And then came distilling the arak later on, distilling the wine to preserve the wine. And this is how Obeidi survived. So they could not access all the vineyards and root out all the vineyards. So the villagers in Mount Lebanon kept on making wine and planting vines, and this is a very close, because from the vine you can get the vine leaves, you can take the wood to heat with, you can have the fruit, of course, you can do the dry fruit, and of course the wine, the arak, and all those nutriments were part of the diet of the population that survived the Ottoman ruling. After the First World War and between the two wars, Lebanon was under French mandate, and the French kept the books in Lebanon. This is why you have all those varietals that are French named. Lebanon and France have very, very close ties historically. Okay. So you would have the Grenache, and I don't know if this is what you want me talking to now, but this is how it's not just anyway. Our relation. Yeah.
We're going to get there anyway. That's a little bit further down the road. But one of the things I wanted to point out is in this slide, you can see that the Bekaa Valley looks a lot like other great wine regions of the world. You have an iron-based red soil mixed with calcareous white stones. And when you start talking about that, you start talking about some of the great wine regions of the world, including Burgundy, parts of Rhone, etc. Like that section of Vaqueras that has a lot of limestone in it, and Gigondas for sure. So it's important for people to realize as they see these pictures, no wonder you can make wine there for 7,000 years. One of the things that's important to you is this statement that we bottle the spirit of Lebanon. And that's a really warm and inviting statement. So I wanted you to put it in your own words, and I threw some pictures up here that might prompt the audience thoughts. And so what are we going to find as the spirit of Lebanon in a bottle of Massaya?
Simply the spirit the spirit of life, Ron, the spirit of life and living beyond all roadblocks, beyond all hurdles, beyond all catastrophes. If you, we cannot be on this and not mention, what happened August 4th. I was with one of your colleagues at Winebo over the phone actually, and my phone started ringing, and we were on Wi-Fi, and my got disconnected. And you all heard of what happened, and it's certainly not negligence, way beyond that. Anyhow, we have the French president here again next Monday, and if you would just see the youth working, you would not believe. Any other people would be so fed up, or people just securing stores and homes that were exploded from potential looters, or people picking others up to hospitals, strangers, inviting them to sleep in their own homes, and beyond that, surviving. Like, lives got destroyed, and another, as if we didn't have enough with COVID, with the economical situation and all of that, and then you get this. The problem with this is that we have this. Not the problem. I mean, Lebanon is in a geopolitical situation whereby we're often on the news, not always for the best reason. We like to enjoy life here. About lots of friends tell me, you were one when we met in Virginia. You said, Sami, I'd love to visit Lebanon. Anyone that has tuned into wine would love to, or anyone has had Lebanese cuisine would love to, or anyone that likes the Mediterranean knows there is something. Despite all the troubles that Lebanon has endured, there is always this star of life that shines out of here, be it in art, be it in philosophy, be it in people wanting to live, be it in music, be it in life's expressions. Lebanon embodies all this. You mentioned earlier that I left in the early 90s, my comfortable life in the US, indeed. And again, I love going to the US because I miss it, and I have my friends, and there are lots of values we share. But Lebanon is in many ways on the front line of what you like about life, Ron. We here defend our values about life. We are literally on the frontier. In 1998, we were harvesting over the Eastern Mountain Range where we have Cap Est. I get the call from the head of the paratroopers regiment saying, Sami, there is ISIS trying to infiltrate from bordering Syria. We have vineyards on the Eastern Mountain Range. You have to pull out your harvesters. I said, Colonel, I'm making wine, not jam here. What do you mean pull out my harvesters? The grapes are ripe. And we had, indeed, he said, it's going to be lightning operations for 2 days or 3. We had to pull out the harvesters. In 2006, another war between our southern neighbors, Israel and Hezbollah here. I had to speak to the US ambassador, to the British ambassador, just to spare our trucks from harvesting. So we are really in a situation where we struggle and fight for life, not a life the way we like to live it, not anything else. And this is the spirit of Lebanon. This is a spirit of joy, of life, of going the extra mile, to be graceful and embracing other people, and taking all this, the beauty of life to all. And this is how we express it at Massaya, through a bottle of wine or a bottle of arak.
Well, I have samples, and I'll be recording virtual tastings, and I will, without doubt, enjoy the spirit of life and embracing life through these wines. My memory of them is very warm, and I'm ready to taste them again. So let's move on and back to that concept about the French mandate and the French grapes that are planted grayly. Is when we look at Lebanese vineyards, we say, wow, that looks a little bit like Rhone, but then there's Cabernet Sauvignon, and well, wait a minute, there's Sauvignon Blanc too. And is the list of grapes as much a result of the French influence over the country, or is it really about Beca and looking at the world and going, well, we have this terroir that matches where these grapes are grown?
Yes, it's double-edged. On the French name side of things, be it Cabernet Sauvignon, Carignan, Grenache, whatever came along post the First World War, with the falling of the Ottoman Empire, the French that have a very long relation with the Maronites, particularly of Lebanon, the Christian Maronites. Here we have the most important church is a Maronite church. Historically, we have very deep ties with the kings of France, and we always spoke French, and the French always were very close in many ways. They kept the books here. After the First World War, when they came back to the region, the French wanted to have a mandate over Lebanon. It's thanks to the French. Mount Lebanon has historically always had an autonomy, but it was really the French that carved Lebanon's map with the Bekaa Valley and all the way to the south. And they reintroduced lots of the missionaries, the Jesuits, the priests, we have the oldest, by the way, American university in the world here. The Protestants were very influential as well. The AUB is a very prominent university here. Reintroduced the French varietals. So this is where the Carignan, the Cinsault came along. Now, when we started Massaya I started in 1995 making the Arak, then met the Brunier family and Dominique Ebrard from Bordeaux, our partners. We put more accent into Rhone varietals because of our discovering the terroir that you beautifully described, although seeing it from a distance till now, because I'm taking you up on visiting us soon. We worked relentlessly in finding the best terroirs, because we came to realize very quickly our partners have eight generation in winemaking, one of them the other 7, realizing that to get the best wines you have to have the best grapes. There is nothing around that, no shortcuts. So it took us 10 years to discover our favorite terroirs. Hadas Baalbek, where you have, this is above Baalbek in your background, is one of them. And we came to realize indeed that those grapes that are Rhone varietals, Mourvèdre, but you could call it Monastrell or Grenache rather than Grenache, because here we speak French, were the best expressions of the terroir. And you might twist my arm on that, but we started shading away more and more from the cabs and the big wines, although Mr. Parker liked to grade us on the 2011 Gold Reserve, the best grape ever from this side of the world. I think we got a 92 or something like that on our full body cab. But we are more and more into wines that resemble the terroir here, and they are more Grenache, Mourvèdre, Cinsault based rather than international varietals, I would say. I hope this has answered.
Yeah, I think it makes complete sense, regardless of how they got there, that they belong there, climate-wise, soil, elevation, and tasting these wines. You don't have to work hard to see the stylistic comparisons to the elegance of great Rhone wines. So it makes sense to me that you would find that Syrah, Grenache, Cinsault, Mourvèdre work really well where you are. Bathed in sunlight, no lack of water if they grow deep, but certainly no rain to be threatened. It all makes sense to me. I just wanted to make sure that they heard it from you instead of from me. That makes more sense, right? So we're going to move to the Iraq in just a second. Let's go backwards. We have enough time to do both. So I think I just want you to encapsulate. We've talked around the Bekaa Valley. We've talked a little bit about the soil type, etc. If you would like to take, like 1 or 2 minutes and get as specific as possible as to why Bekaa is so great for red wine. We've sort of alluded to it. If you want to say anything else about it, this is a great moment. And then after that, we'll talk about Iraq and take some questions.
Yes. For the wines, in brief, because I would love to see the tasting you will do. The rosé has really put us on the map. This is a Cinsault-based rosé. I mean, when we started making the rosé in 1998, we just, you simply see that it pleased. It's this Provençal style, but it has an edge to it. It has saltiness. It has minerality. All the wines from Massaya come with a sort of minerality, and this is very much thanks to the terroir. We did not reinvent the wheel. We just went with the basics, but went for the most extreme terroirs that really are the most rewarding. My brother Ramsey says always it takes a lazy winemaker to make good wine in Lebanon. So much the terroir. You know, we don't have to worry about the disease and the frost and the all sort of fungus or other things you would have to spray elsewhere. So no spraying of the grapes, organic by default, a very natural approach. So we don't force nature in any way. We work with our own indigenous yeast. We work with the lunar calendar. We work with the tides. We don't filter the wines. Every year we have an issue with the rosé coming in late because we don't force it. We just, we release it in February. It reaches the U.S. shores in March. As you said earlier about the Blanc, it took us years. This facility you show in Fa'ara, it's down. It was next to the Temple of Bacchus in the earlier picture, and here it's at night is where I'm standing beneath those red, those red canvas here is where we produce the white. We came to realize within 10 years of our partnership that altitude would make the difference. And this is where we started going up in altitude. And my father, bless his soul, had purchased also this land here in the early 70s. And when we used to hike in the area, we discovered grapes, again, Obeidi grapes. And this is when it started thinking of why don't we start a second winery here. So on Mount Lebanon, we're at 1700 average, and we cross a mountain here. I wish it was clearer, but we oversee here around the highest altitude Roman temple in altitude in the world. It's right beneath us, 1590 meters. And the Romans used to be blocked here by the snow, but this kind of protected the Mediterranean from any invaders, protected Baalbek from any invaders from the Mediterranean. And we're exactly on the same route going up the mountain and harvesting now during harvest time. Those roads that cross from here to the Bekaa are totally blocked under 4 or 5 meters of snow in the winter. You cannot cross them. So we have to go down back to the coast and take another route to reach the Bekaa. So this is how high in altitude we are. The Colombier is the...
Excuse me for just a second. That statement alone about how much snow you have in the winter is going to shock most people who are watching right now and who later. It's such an important thing because you talked about that cooling influence of the mountains. That cold air sinks down into the valley every day as the hot air rises. It's so important in viticulture. All right, go back to the next one.
Exactly. It's a bit, I've skied in Big Bear in California. You can trust me on that. And in March, actually, had I known, I would have sent it to you. I snowboarded. I came back with COVID from Florida on March 13th. I was in on the 14th. I snowboarded between the vines. Colombier is our dovecot, the bird's house. This is where the property I recuperated from squatters. This is where this wine comes from. And it's Grenache, Cinsault, Tempranillo. You will ask me why Tempranillo, because the Phoenicians also, we came to discover planted Tempranillo in Spain. We reintroduced Tempranillo. It does beautifully well, although it's not French. So it's not only the French, but Mediterranean varietals we work with. Terrasse de Baalbek. Terrasse de Baalbek is exactly from the vineyards you have in your background. This is a GSM, a Grenache Syrah Mourvèdre. This picture is a couple of years back, but this is exactly where those grapes were. We were literally there yesterday with the children before heading to Tanail for lunch. It's about 20 minutes from where I am now, and about another 40 or 30 minutes into the winery. And those are the most fascinating terroirs we came to discover. And on the Eastern Mountain Range, lastly, the third red, is Cap Est. Cap Est is where I mentioned to you the story of the general calling me the colonel having to pull up the harvest. Cap Est in navigation full east. This is a Grenache Mourvèdre from the Eastern Mountain Range, the most northeast extreme vineyard you can find in Lebanon, and this is Cap Est. So those are the three reds that are all now single varietals. Massaya has moved from blends about 7-8 years ago, 2013, 14. Onwards, it became all single varietals because it was we started in 98 and then we started discovering the acclimatization. Every terroir's specificities. Although we do always parcellaire, we vinify separately, we came to realize that we wanted really to take the expression of the terroir. And this is the reserve that got the, is Parker rated and highly, sought after in the US, thanks to the Capsov and Barrique, while the other wines are vinified in foudre, in big oak vats. You see another approach rather than barrique and over concentration, big oak vats. The rosé does not see the oak; it is vinified in concrete. The Colombier does not see the oak either, but the Cap S, the Terrasse, the white are vinified in foudre, in big vats, in oak, French oak, thanks to the partners we have in Châteauneuf.
I happen to like that approach. I think it suits the grapes really, really well. And I have no complaints having tasted the wines. I only had smiles, and that's the magic, is right. A great glass of wine at minimum should at least make you smile really, really well, right? So let's talk about that, because this is a tradition, and it's a culture, and it's part of that spirit of Lebanon. So we have here a picture of sort of the final product, plus the idea that it's aged in clay pots or amphorae, and a picture of the aging facility. And so walk us through this real quick, and then we'll open up for questions. So if you can do this for like 3 or 4 minutes, we'll have plenty of time for questions.
This is the Magnum, and this is how we drink that. You saw me earlier with a milky white glass.
I saw that. I was like, oh.
Yeah, that's the arak, and when you add water to it, bless his soul, Bourdain said the word when he visited me, and then he said, it blooms. Look, it crystallizes. See? So this is. Oh, sorry, my hand was in the way. You see how you have this line between the arak and you add water just till it mixes perfectly, or you may choose to drink it neat with no water, like my mom used to likes to do, which is 87, 88, so that should be a good sign.
Yeah.
And then a couple of ice cubes, and this is how we have it. It's triple distilled in Moorish, we call them Moorish. The Moors of North Africa discovered distillation, Moorish lead copper stills, and then we age the arak in those amphorae. Here you have in the pictures where you have the candles. So it's really our national drink. It's very it's around the Mediterranean basin. You have this anise flavor, but the difference with the Massaya arak, it doesn't see any colorings, no fennel, no sweeteners, nothing of the sort. It's pure white wine from the Ubaidi varietal, triple distilled with anise. So, cheers to that.
Yeah, it is impressively pure. I tasted it at the office, and I think I tasted it for like an hour after you left, and it was just a really pleasant memory. And you have on your on your website, all kinds of resources for our spirits professionals to turn it into cocktails. But at home, this is the purest and simplest way to drink it, other than the way your mom does, which is just straight.
Right, exactly. And I know it's morning time your way. We sometimes have it in the morning with eggs here and bacon. Our bacon is made awarma, we call it. It's confit d'agneau, or with raw liver. So I don't want to scare you too much. It's goat raw liver. We have lots of goats here up in the mountains, and it's a delicacy locally. But you have to be here, not at the Virginia office to exactly.
That's right. Yeah, they won't let me drink Arak at 10:30 at the office. But that just speaks to the spirit of Lebanon. It's like, okay, this is a moment in time to enjoy life, whether it's 10 o'clock in the morning, 8 o'clock in the morning, or midnight. It's still a moment in time to enjoy life. And I think if there's anything that I'd want people to take away from this, other than the technical data, is to fall in love with the idea of enjoying life and the spirit of Lebanon through a glass of wine from Massaya. So
thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. If you have a question for Sami, now's a great time to put it in the Q&A window. If you don't have questions, because he's been so descriptive, that's great. I bet TJ has questions, even if they don't, because TJ always has questions. But this has been a great interview. So let's see what we have here as we give them a minute to type.
May I just add in one thing, Ron? I cannot but raise a glass now. I mentioned the victims of August 4th, but it tells you how much the world is changing. Again, I was with one of your colleagues on a call when this occurred. But my personal relation with Winebo as a company, and I don't know if all the audience is Winebo or not, but I will say it just for the just for you and your colleagues to know has been a long lasting beautiful relation that I started with the wonderful Richard Driscoll a while ago in the early 2000s. We're I think in our 16th year of partnership now, and I have came along to meet wonderful people because without Winebo, I could not portray this message of civility and tolerance and identity and life from Lebanon to the world. And I let you imagine how important. I leave you to realize how important the U.S. As a free world and message of civility is important to us, because we look up and we're very close to the US embassy here. We always have staff from the embassy here, and also we're very close to the airborne regiment, where we have US Army officers based and troops, and they always come to visit the winery. So we are very close in that sense. And whenever we have officials visiting, I insist they have a bottle of wine with them, so they realize from this part of the world that again has seen so much. Lebanon is the nation that resembles mostly the US in its freedoms, in its diversity, in its democracy, in its freedom of expression, and above all, in drinking and offering wine on a table.
That's awesome to hear. And, and there is a comment that TJ is going to get to in just a second, but I think it's really great for those of us who are live on this to hear at this moment in our own strife in this country, someone from outside of our country pointing to us as still a country that is looked to for its civility and freedoms. And when we as people of any people inside their own country have a different view of their own country than those outside. So I thank you for saying that about our country, regardless of our own angst and issues that are going on at the moment and always have. It's really nice to hear somebody else still believe in America. So thanks.
It's normal, Ron, to have issues. It's normal. You cannot embrace such a wonderful, I mean, on the individual basis, and I love all I see in the US, and it's such a welcoming country. People can be critical whether they live somewhere, indeed, but trust me, you value when you see things from a distance. And through wine and through Massaya, I have had the chance to travel quite a bit. We have wonderful markets. UK is one, Canada is one, but also the Emirates and areas like that. But I have very, very, very strong, deep connection with the US. And I came back after you said, Sammy, you left in the early 90s. Yes, I left, but to come back with a message, with a purpose in life, rather than being just another social security number and doing a good job, getting paid well. I came back with the purpose of opening the eyes of the US to Lebanon and this part of the world, where we really in Lebanon share same values, same human values, and same eagerness for democracy and freedom and liberty. And that's very important. And nothing expresses it better here than wine and arak. I was very young here, training to fight for our survival. I will not take you into that, but I have friends that gave up their lives for us to remain on here. And this is why in 92 I couldn't give up and came back. And this is the main drive. I mean, the tip of the water was what the assassination of the Shamon family. but also it was for all those that gave their lives for this message to continue. And Massaya is the best expression I could find to relay that message. So I go back with lots of pride to the US, and to visit the US. One day I arrived in JFK. I will tell you this. I was going to a Winebow vintage, the vintage harvest before Winebow became, and we're now with you in about 14 or 16 states. And I had wines with me because we wanted the last vintage to pour behind the table. I kept stepping into a car, and the taxi, it was a yellow cab before Uber. Huh? I put my bag in the car, and he said, "Hey, where are you from?" I said, "Lebanon." Yeah. And he, says it's something meaning. It was Ramadan. That I told him, it's not exactly. You should not. It's not exactly me. You know what you have in your car? It's all wine, and we're going to a tasting. So the guy was stunned like this, just to tell you that there is a spirit of the US that we share here, that is we relate to beautifully when looking at America from this. So whatever you're going through in terms of disturbances and elections and opinions and views, etc., it just will pass by, and I think you will be the great nation you are. So.
Thank you for the compliments and for your warm friendship. Robert Houdon says hello. And with that, we're going to let TJ close us up.
Yeah, you must have friends all over the world, Sammy. So, Robert Houdon from Florida wanted to give you a shout out and hopes to see you again. A question about Massaya and how you position it in the world of wine. You have, it's certainly not New World, as you've noted, but it's not European either. There's indigenous grapes that people aren't familiar with. There's blends. What have you seen as successful promotions of Massaya wines, both on premise and at retail?
TJ, I love your question. I'll answer you straightforward. I'm sure we have from people from the sales team, and I'll facilitate with you on how to frame it. Before that, let me say hi to Bob. Of course, I remember Bob, and we had a great time together in Florida. Actually, it was one of my first work with in Florida and discovering Florida. I would put it as, one of my favorite restaurants in DC, Le Diplomate. They pour the Colombier I hold in my hand by the glass, and very smartly, just to facilitate it for people, they have it as Colombier Rhone Blend, Bekaa Valley, Lebanon. So people can see Lebanon and not be familiar and be put off like that. When you put Rhone Blend, it becomes very, and actually it's not quite untrue because it's the same grapes. Plus you have the Chateauneuf du Pape. If you look at the labels of Massaya, we have the French partners, Brunier, Ebrard on the labels. So it's very easy to portray it as a Rhone Blend when you're talking about the first red. For the rosé, it's a Provence style rosé. So it's also an easy approach of understanding. I would see it as a Eastern Mediterranean or a Levantine wine, but we did not want to be put under varietals, just to be mainstream. We just went with our own personality. And stores like, also there is a wonderful place in New Jersey. I saw a couple of stacks on the floor, or at Whole Foods. I was in Washington State. They had a promotion with our rosé, putting it as Mediterranean. Mediterranean is a big label now, and that's easier for the mentality, because people can be confused with Lebanon, where it is, if they're not really. Now we see there is more and more understanding of Lebanon. But if you put Mediterranean Rhone Blend, I think you get it quite straight for placing in sales. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Sorry, one more thing for the anise, for the arak. That's an easy call. The blue bottle. Wherever we've been, we out wherever you put it on a shelf in an off-premise. You outsell any arak, any pastis, any ouzo, any sambuca, because thanks to its quality. Massaya has no additives, as I said again earlier, no colorings, just pure anise from here, Mount Hermon, between Syria, Lebanon, and Israel. It's organic anise seeds that have wonderful flavors. So there is no sweeteners. If you taste it, TJ, you will see. You think it's sweet. The sweetness is just purely from the anise. Anise is very good for digestion. Originally, it's medicinal. Actually, the Arabs discovered distillation for medicinal reasons. Alcohol. And anise is the flavoring. It's very good for digestion, and it's very soothing and easing. And when you have it with the Mediterranean cuisine, it cleanses the palate between every little sip of our different mezes. So the wines are Mediterranean without maquillage. There is no over oak. There is no. You don't open it and you get this perfume when you open the white wine. It's more on the minerality, on the finesse, and it cuts through food beautifully. Any of the wines you would taste.
Thank you. I think we're going to have to cut it off there. I do want to tell everybody that's watching, please look for those virtual wine tastings of the Massaya wines on our YouTube, Winebow YouTube channel in the very near future. And thank you to Ron Edwards for his hosting as always. And thank you, Sammy, for sharing your knowledge. And I just want to share one comment that says it about as well as can be said from Kathleen. Thank you for your passion and sharing the information about your country and the struggles involved. Thank you so much, Sammy. And thank you to all watching. We'll hope to see you all soon.
Thank you, Ron.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Ron.